As we continue to get you the latest trickling in from Ukraine, 10 civilians, 40 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed after Russia launched that full-scale attack on Ukraine. The Russian president saying earlier this morning that he will be launching that military operation in eastern Ukraine, post which fast-paced developments, explosions rocking several parts of Ukraine along with missile strikes. In the latest, we're also getting in reports of Russian and Ukrainian forces battling for control of an air base on the northern outskirts of the capital Kiev. This as dozens of attack helicopters have been swooping in on the area. The Ukrainian president has urged for an anti-Putin coalition following Russia's invasion and promised that Ukraine will not give up its freedom. Remember earlier, Volodymyr Zelensky has urged civilians to step forward to defend the country after Russia carried out that attack. Russia claims that its military has destroyed more than 70 military targets, including 11 airfields in Ukraine. There have been a series of statements of condemnation, pledges of support coming in from the NATO, the European Union, the US, the UK. The American president will be meeting with his, has already met with his national security team, that meeting underway to discuss the latest developments in Ukraine ahead of his address, where he will be spelling out fresh sanctions to hold Moscow accountable. Remember earlier, he had called the Russian attack on Ukraine absolutely unjustifiable and promised retaliation through fresh sanctions. He will be speaking later this evening. We've already heard the NATO and the European Union reassuring their complete solidarity with Ukraine at this time of crisis. Russia attacking Ukraine, confirming the worst fears of the West. Currently, several Ukrainian cities are under attack. Let's name them out for you. The capital, Kiev, Kharkiv, Kramatorsk, Mariupol, Odessa, and many others. Explosions could be heard before dawn in the capital, Kiev. Gunfire rattled out near the main airport as sirens blared out across the city. According to the Ukraine presidency, 40 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed so far. 10 civilians have also lost their lives.
Дорогі українці, дорогі кияни, те, що зараз зроблено зі сторони Росії, велика трагедія. Трагедія не тільки для України, це трагедія для всієї Європи. Але переконаний в тому, що ми вистоїмо. Вистоїмо і зможемо показати нашу силу і дух.
Black smoke was seen rising over the Ukrainian Defense Ministry intelligence headquarters in central Kiev. Although the building appeared to be intact, Ukraine has said that some of its military command centers have been hit by Russian missile strikes. The Russian Defense Ministry, meanwhile, claiming that it has neutralized Ukrainian military air bases and even its air defense systems. According to emergency services, a Ukrainian military plane with 14 people on board crashed near the capital, Kiev. Meanwhile, Ukraine claims that it has downed 7 Russian aircraft. All this while Russian missiles have been raining down on several parts of Ukraine. Explosions have been heard in several parts as well. On your screen are visuals from Mariupol, Kharkiv and Kiev, showing damaged vehicles, broken radar arrays and other equipment at the Ukrainian military facilities. Fragments of damaged military equipment also seen near playgrounds.
We don't have the exact number, but the number you see on Ukrainian media and your media reporting from Ukraine are correct. We can report of those. You can actually check our headquarters of Ukrainian armed forces to see the losses. But we're putting up a real fight. We're trying to get as many Russians to another world as possible as well. Tanks, helicopters, planes being shot down. We are defending our land. Unfortunately, some of the places very difficult to defend. They now block the whole sea. We can have access to the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. They started it and blocked it and formally explained it as anti-terrorist attack in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. which, limiting our capabilities of bringing the reinforcement or even the supplies. One of the supplies we will need quite soon, quite critically. There is not just military supplies, but humanitarian supplies, the fuels, because they are targeting specifically fuel depots and the infrastructure, critical infrastructure, dams, bridges. Now they try it, and at the process we are fighting over the airfield of Antonov Design Bureau, which is 15 minutes, 20 minutes from Kiev, civilian airport belonging to Antonov Air Company. So that's more or less the situation right now on the ground. I'm more than happy to talk to you and have your specific questions. Thank you.
Prime Minister, Sky News. Can I just ask you, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he is going to announce some tougher sanctions later today. What specific sanctions do you want to see? And are you disappointed that the SWIFT banking system hasn't come into play with the restricted?
I prepared for each and every one of you. I'll give it to you. This is the list of sanctions. In the financial sphere only, you will have it by the end of this conversation, but the SWIFT is here as well.
So you want the SWIFT system?
We want SWIFT, we want the Russian Central Bank to be sanctioned. We have a list of very heavy sanctions. We believe that these sanctions, if they are introduced, will have Putin seriously to reconsider what he is doing.
But it seems that SWIFT is not going to be introduced.
As of now, we don't see it. I know that it was discussed. It was referred as very grave and hellish sanctions. But for many reasons, they are not introduced yet. I hope that after our conversations with the UK, we will see how the new sanctions updated.
I just have another question, which is, you are facing one of the most powerful armies in the world. Do you actually need military support in terms of boots on the ground to be able to stand any chance to repel this attack?
At this particular moment, we have enough people who don't have enough equipment.
So you need more equipment for
yes, but we were quite open, I myself was quite open, telling that at a particular time when our existence as a nation, as 40 million nation, would come to real question, we will ask everything on top of equipment support, financial support, fuels, humanitarian aid, everything we've been already discussing.
Greg Mackenzie from BBC News. In terms of the British government and the wider community, you've kind of answered it just there. What more do you want to see in terms of this coming to an end?
We wanted something which only NATO can provide. We wanted no-fly zone over Ukraine. This is very serious, very professional military talk, which we have to have with your people, with the rest of NATO allies. It is very serious, dramatic move. I'm not pre-telling right now what would come as a result of this conversation, but this is radical conversation. We'll have to talk. Everything else we're discussing right now. Our ministers of defense will talk in around 4 or 5 hours. We will just hand it over the request of some particular equipment. We're using, by the way, those equipment which was provided by you, and NLAVs were used today, Bayraktars were used today to destroy our Russian tanks and armored vehicles.
And do you think he can be stopped?
We hope, all of us hope, that he will be stopped. The losses are already unbearable, at least for us. Maybe he can survive these losses. Maybe his society is not prepared, like ourselves, to cherish each and every life. For us, it's very painful.
And just lastly, in terms of you being here and not in Ukraine, and the future for you, maybe the possibility that you might never be able to go back. How does that feel?
We haven't been considering. We have we had the meeting today at the embassy because all of us have their families back, the parents, the brothers, sisters. It's very painful for us. At the same time, we know how many of your nationals are in Ukraine right now. We are in consultation with your governments, how to get these people out, how to help those citizens, and even Ukrainian citizens who are members of the family. So this is a very painful and very difficult conversation we have to have right now to find out how we can help them. Don't forget that the sky is closed. We did it because we want to avoid any danger to any commercial flights of any nations. Remember MH17, how they've been shot down by the separatists over our territory, but in controlled sphere of it. We wanted to avoid this. We now have to understand how we can actually get people in and out. The sea is blocked. We have only, that's the western borders of the Ukraine land bridge.
And Ambassador, are you expecting any more escalation in Kiev itself, other than what we've seen
15 minutes from Kiev, this airport. If they take over this airport, they will use it for the paratroopers and heavy ammunition, heavy tanks to get, because from the border by land, you will have to cross 100 kilometers of well defended roads and fields. And Ukrainians are fighting right now. They are close to Kharkiv, which is second biggest city. They took a couple of smaller towns on the south of Ukraine. They came from Crimea, where they stationed, because we allowed them in 1991 to stay until 2017. We always knew that we have to get rid of them, because sooner or later they will use these bases. Now they're using against us. They're coming into southern parts of the Ukrainian mainland, trying probably to secure this water channel, which is coming from major Ukrainian river Dnieper, which used to supply Crimea when Crimea was part of the Ukrainian territory.
So you are expecting Russian ground forces, if they can manage, you are expecting them in the capital, in Kiev?
We talked with our government, with our ministers, and the situation in Kiev as well. These groups of saboteurs, even police, the internal forces, the National Guard, it's not just for the armed forces, they're fighting with them now.
And can I just ask you, in the run-up to this, your president had a very calm tone. He was, as we all understand, trying not to stoke too much panic, but it seems that most Ukrainians really didn't expect this huge scale of the attack. Were you prepared enough as a country, as a government? Did this come as a bit of a surprise, maybe even for you, the scale of it?
Some Ukrainians believe that we would be much better prepared if we did not allow our nuclear weapons to be transferred to Russia in 1994 in exchange of guarantees, which are obviously not working. They failed to divert this attack, which is happening right now. The rest of the Ukrainians believe that we will live in a marriage within the Soviet Union, if you want me to put it this way, for so many years, that they wouldn't come to kill their brothers and sisters. We have so many family contacts, so many business contacts, cultural contacts. That's why Ukrainians could not even wrap their head around this, how it can actually happen. Zelensky, the president himself, he lived in Moscow. He was mentioned for a couple of times for 10 years, working there. So for many Ukrainians, it's unthinkable.
So it's fair to say that for a lot of the Ukrainian population, just the sheer scale of the attack came as a bit of a surprise.
And the scale, although talking to most of and I had the privilege to talk, we were discussing most of the ways, and most of the ways we sort of foresaw at that time were now happening. Like they're coming through the excursion zone of Chernobyl. This zone is not protected because there is radiation, nobody lives there. They now came through this particular unprotected part of our borders through Belarusian territory. So everything is happening as we saw it before.
And just also want to ask you, do you think that President Zelensky and the rest of the government took the intelligence warnings from the US and UK side seriously in the run-up to the crisis, when they were saying that they do expect a large-scale invasion to happen?
Being today, where I am now and where all of us now, we can say that we should have started much earlier, maybe decades ago, to invest more in our army, to prepare ourselves. Not many people in Ukraine believed that we had. That's why we were actually trying to get into NATO all these years, because we always believed that they would come. But how real it is, when there's a difference between what you do as a political figure, a political person, and what you're actually preparing your nation to sacrifice to defend ourselves. We had probably to divert more of our budget, and it's not huge, for the army. We had to increase the number of people to be able to defend. But the war is not over. We are fighting right now. People dying as we speak.
Можна українською питання? Да? Якщо коротко, то основні наші пропозиції, вимоги – це SWIFT, амуніція та закрите небо.
Я вам передам зараз ви побачите. We are talking about what we expect to be done in Ukraine for Ukrainian public as well. Припинити операції в російському рублі, санкціонувати Центральний банк Росії, прикрити SWIFT, відключити від Visa і MasterCard, всі рахунки за кордоном, які належать руським громадянам, викинути звідси олігархів, які знаходяться в Лондоні, в цій системі фінансовій. Це багато заходів, які зробляться. I will hand over all of it, that's enough copies for each and every one of you. I will, okay, absolutely. I will do it. The ban energy trade with Russia. This is very painful, understands won't be easier for many nations, but that's something which we believe has the most of effect. The ban foreign investments in Russia, prohibited Western governments' pension funds from investing in Russian assets, sanction secondary trading of Russian debts and equities, sanction Russian central bank. We believe that something even harder than SWIFT. The SWIFT is also here. The withdraw Russia out of bond and equity investment indexes. Disconnect Russia from Visa and MasterCard. Freeze foreign Russian assets, sanction Russian direct investments funds.
We're listening into those remarks being made by the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, saying that we should have been prepared for this decades ago. The Ukrainian envoy talking about the situation on the ground in several parts of Ukraine, saying that people are dying, innocent civilians are losing their lives as a result of Russia's aggression, and this aggression must be put to an end. What is happening is unthinkable for people on the ground. Just to get you up to speed with the latest coming in at this point, Russian forces, as per reports, have entered Chernobyl and fighting may have caused some damage. This is according to an advisor to the Ukrainian Interior Ministry. In a tweet, the Ukrainian president has said that Russian forces entered Chernobyl to seize the nuclear plant as well, and some damage might have been caused, is what the advisor to the Ukrainian Interior Ministry has stated as per reports.